That kind of stupid takes a plan. And I say that because, number one, this is America. That had never happened before in America. That's the sort of thing that happens in a country whose Powerball jackpot is 287 chickens and a goat.
Hello, Patriots. Welcome back to Signal 76, where we cut through the noise and deliver the unvarnished truth that the mainstream media won't dare touch. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into something that should have every freedom-loving American fired up and ready to take action. We're talking about Senator John Kennedy's absolutely devastating takedown of the weaponized Department of Justice during Pam Bondi's confirmation hearing. And folks, this is the kind of truth-telling that gives me hope for our republic. Before we jump into this explosive content, I need you to do something right now. Hit that subscribe button, smash the like button until it breaks, and drop a comment below telling me what you think about the systematic destruction of our justice system over the past 4 years. And Patriots, you better believe you need to watch this entire video because what I'm about to reveal will fundamentally change how you view the corruption that has infected our most sacred institutions. This isn't just political theater. This is about the very survival of our constitutional republic. What we witnessed in that hearing room wasn't just another political moment. It was a masterclass in how a true conservative fighter exposes the rot that has been eating away at our justice system like a cancer.
Senator Cruz would be next, but he's not here, so I call on Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, welcome. Congratulations. Can we agree that legitimacy is important to America's criminal justice system?
Yes, Senator.
Can we agree that legitimacy is important to the Department of Justice, which in part administers our criminal justice system?
Yes, Senator.
And if Americans come to believe that our criminal justice system or our Department of Justice is acting illegitimately, that makes Americans less likely to accept the results of that system, does it not?
Yes, Senator.
And that makes Americans less likely to follow the substantive laws that we pass that are administered by the Department of Justice. Isn't that true?
Yes, Senator.
And if that happens, we have chaos, don't we?
Chaos.
And the social contract is breached, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you remember a person by the name of Michael Avenatti?
Yes.
Several years ago, he was a media star here in Washington.
An attorney, correct?
Yes. He was a media star. And many members of our media loved him because he persistently bashed Donald Trump. And he was on TV every day. He was on CNN more than Wolf Blitzer. Do you know where Mr. Avenatti is today?
I believe he's sitting in prison, Senator.
He's in jail because he was a crook. And the Department of Justice helped put him there, didn't it?
Yes, Senator.
Do you remember a gentleman by the name of Sam Bankman-Fried?
Yes, Senator.
Boy genius. So smart and so powerful that he thought he could command the tides. So smart and so powerful and so rich that he would go to meetings with serious people like Bill Clinton like Tony Blair, looking like a slob, looking like a fourth runner-up to a John Belushi lookalike contest. And he thought it was cute. Where's Mr. Bankman-Fried today?
I believe he is in prison, and I believe that's from the Netflix series I saw as well.
Because he's a crook. And who helped put him there?
The Department of Justice, Senator.
Can we agree that there's some really, really good men and women at the Department of Justice?
Many, many great men and women in the Justice Department, as well, Senator, as all the law enforcement agencies that fall within the Department of Justice. They're out there risking their lives, especially the law enforcement officers, every single day.
Can we agree, though, that there have been and may be today some bad people at the Department of Justice?
Yes, Senator.
We don't know for sure because for the last 4 years, the curtains there have been tightly drawn. But I think a minority of people there, have delegitimized America's criminal justice system. The most destabilizing act that I saw in the past 4 years, maybe in the history of the department, is when Attorney General Garland decided on the basis of dubious facts and untested legal theories to criminally prosecute a former president of the United States. And not only that, this is the special part. He decided to do it after the former president of the United States had announced that he was going to run against Attorney General Garland's boss, didn't he?
Senator, are you referring to going after a political opponent?
I think so. Now, this is one person's opinion. That kind of stupid takes a plan. And I say that because, number one, this is America. That had never happened before in America. That's the sort of thing that happens in a country whose Powerball jackpot is 287 chickens and a goat. It doesn't happen here. And I call it stupid because it broke the seal. It broke the seal. It normalized it. There are a lot of ambitious prosecutors in America, Democrat and Republican. And I'll bet you right now there's some prosecutor in a particular state thinking about, well, maybe I ought to file criminal charges against President Biden's inner circle for conspiring to conceal his mental decline. And that's the road we're headed down. And you've got to fix it, Counselor. You've got to fix it. And here's what, in my judgment, what I would ask you to do. Find out who the bad guys are and the bad women and get rid of them. Find out who the good people are and lift them up. But do it on the basis of facts and evidence and fairness. Because the temptation of some people is going to be, they're going to tell you, look, two wrongs don't make a right, but they do make it even. Don't resist that temptation. Help us restore legitimacy to the Department of Justice.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Kennedy, with his folksy wisdom and razor-sharp intellect, laid bare the absolute corruption and weaponization that has turned our Department of Justice into nothing more than a political hit squad for the radical left. Let me paint you the picture of what really happened here, because the fake news media is either ignoring this completely or spinning it into some kind of partisan attack. Senator Kennedy opened with a fundamental truth that every American should understand. Legitimacy is the cornerstone of our entire criminal justice system. Without legitimacy, without the trust of the American people, our entire system of law and order collapses into chaos. And that's exactly what the Biden administration and their cronies at the DOJ have been systematically destroying for the past 4 years. Kennedy masterfully established this foundation by getting Pam Bondi to agree on basic principles that no honest person could dispute. When Americans lose faith in their justice system, when they believe it's being used as a weapon against political opponents rather than as a blind instrument of justice, the social contract that holds our society together begins to crumble. We're not talking about abstract political theory here. We're talking about the fundamental pillars that separate us from banana republics and third world dictatorships. But then Kennedy did something brilliant. Instead of just talking in abstract terms, he brought up concrete examples that perfectly illustrate how the system is supposed to work when it's not corrupted by partisan politics. He reminded everyone about Michael Avenatti, that grandstanding lawyer who became a media darling because he spent every waking moment attacking President Trump. The fake news media couldn't get enough of this guy. CNN had him on more than their own anchors. They treated him like some kind of legal genius and resistance hero. Where is Michael Avenatti today? He's sitting in a federal prison cell because he was nothing more than a common crook, and the Department of Justice did its job by prosecuting him. This is how the system is supposed to work. When someone commits crimes, regardless of their political affiliations or media popularity, they get prosecuted. The law is supposed to be blind to politics, applied equally to everyone. Kennedy then brought up Sam Bankman-Fried, another perfect example of how justice should work. Here was this so-called boy genius, this cryptocurrency king who was so arrogant and so convinced of his own power that he would show up to meetings with world leaders like Bill Clinton and Tony Blair looking like he just rolled out of bed after a 3-day bender. The guy thought his wealth and connections made him untouchable. He thought he could manipulate markets, steal billions from investors, and face no consequences because he was donating millions to the right political causes. But justice caught up with him too, didn't it? He's now serving decades in federal prison because the system worked the way it's supposed to work. These examples aren't accidents that Kennedy chose. They perfectly demonstrate that when the DOJ operates with integrity, when it follows the law rather than political orders, it can and does hold powerful people accountable regardless of their political connections or media popularity. But here's where Kennedy's presentation becomes absolutely devastating for the current administration and their apologists. After establishing that the DOJ can and should work properly, he pivoted to the elephant in the room, the most egregious abuse of prosecutorial power in American history. We're talking about Merrick Garland's decision to criminally prosecute a former president of the United States, not based on clear evidence of serious crimes, but based on what Kennedy correctly identified as dubious facts and untested legal theories. Let that sink in for a moment, Patriots. We're not talking about a clear-cut case where a former president was caught red-handed committing obvious crimes. We're talking about novel legal theories, untested interpretations of laws, and circumstances so questionable that legal experts across the political spectrum have raised serious concerns about the prosecutions. This isn't how justice is supposed to work in America. But the timing makes it even worse. And this is where Kennedy's argument becomes absolutely bulletproof. These prosecutions didn't happen in a vacuum. They didn't happen immediately after President Trump left office when you might argue there was some urgent need for accountability. No. These prosecutions were announced and pursued after President Trump declared his candidacy for the 2024 election. Think about that timing. The sitting administration's Justice Department decided to prosecute the leading opposition candidate for president. This is exactly the kind of thing we used to condemn when it happened in other countries. We used to point to nations where the ruling party would prosecute their political opponents and say, thank God we live in America where that kind of corruption could never happen. Well, it happened here, and it happened under Joe Biden and Merrick Garland's watch. Kennedy's description of this as the most destabilizing act in the history of the Department of Justice isn't hyperbole. It's an accurate assessment of what we've witnessed. Never before in American history has a sitting administration used the federal justice system to prosecute the leading opposition candidate. Never. This crosses a line that previous administrations, regardless of party, understood should never be crossed. And Kennedy's observation about what this precedent means for the future should terrify every American who cares about the rule of law. He pointed out that there are ambitious prosecutors all across this country, both Democrats and Republicans, who are now looking at these Trump prosecutions and thinking, well, if they can do that, what's stopping me from going after my political enemies? Kennedy specifically mentioned the possibility of prosecutors going after Biden's inner circle for allegedly conspiring to conceal the president's mental decline. Now, whether you think that's a valid potential prosecution or not, the point is that the precedent has been set. The seal has been broken. The understanding that we don't criminally prosecute our political opponents in America has been shattered, And once that genie is out of the bottle, it's almost impossible to put it back. This is how democracies die, patriots. Not with tanks rolling down Pennsylvania Avenue, but with the gradual erosion of norms and institutions that have kept our system stable for over 2 centuries. When political parties start using the justice system as a weapon against their opponents, when prosecutions are timed to interfere with elections, when novel legal theories are stretched beyond recognition to target political enemies, you're watching the transformation of a republic into something much darker. But Kennedy didn't just diagnose the problem. He laid out a prescription for how Pam Bondi can begin to restore legitimacy to the Department of Justice. His advice was simple but profound. Find the bad actors and get rid of them. Find the good people and lift them up, but do it all based on facts, evidence, and fairness rather than political considerations. This is crucial because the temptation for revenge is going to be enormous. After 4 years of weaponized prosecutions, after watching the justice system be perverted for political purposes, there's going to be pressure to turn the tables and go after Democrats with the same kind of questionable legal theories and dubious prosecutions. Kennedy was warning against that temptation, and he was right to do so. 2 wrongs don't make a right, but as Kennedy noted with his characteristic wit, they do make it even. The problem is that making it even doesn't restore legitimacy to our institutions. It just continues the cycle of weaponization and political prosecution that's destroying faith in our system. What we need is a return to actual justice, blind justice, where prosecutions are based on clear evidence of serious crimes rather than political calculations. The people who corrupted the DOJ over the past 4 years need to be identified and removed, not because they're Democrats or because they oppose Trump, but because they betrayed their oaths and turned a law enforcement agency into a political weapon. Similarly, the good people at the DOJ, and Kennedy was right to acknowledge that there are many dedicated public servants there, need to be elevated and empowered to do their jobs without political interference. This brings us to the broader question of what this confirmation hearing and Kennedy's questioning tells us about the state of our republic. We're at crossroads, patriots. We can continue down the path of weaponized institutions and political prosecutions, where every election becomes a life or death struggle because the losing side faces potential criminal charges, or we can step back from the brink and restore the norms and principles that have made America exceptional. The choice we make will determine whether our children grow up in a constitutional republic where the rule of law protects everyone equally, or in a banana republic where political power determines who gets prosecuted and who gets protected. Kennedy's questioning of Bondi was ultimately about that choice, about whether we're going to restore legitimacy to our institutions or continue the destructive spiral we've been on. What gives me hope is that we have leaders like Senator Kennedy who are willing to speak these truths clearly and directly, without the usual political double talk and euphemisms. When he called Garland's prosecutions stupid, he wasn't being crude or unprofessional. He was accurately describing the self-destructive nature of breaking precedents that have kept our system stable. And what gives me even more hope is that we have nominees like Pam Bondi who understand the gravity of the situation and the importance of restoring faith in our institutions. Her responses to Kennedy's questions show that she grasps both the problem and the solution. She understands that the DOJ's legitimacy has been severely damaged and that rebuilding that legitimacy is going to require more than just changing personnel. It's going to require a fundamental recommitment to the principles of equal justice under law. But here's what every patriot watching this video needs to understand. This restoration isn't going to happen automatically. It's going to require constant vigilance and pressure from we the people. We need to hold our elected officials accountable for keeping their promises about depoliticizing our institutions. We need to support leaders who are willing to speak truth, to power the way Kennedy did in that hearing room. Most importantly, we need to stay engaged and informed. The fake news media isn't going to tell you about moments like Kennedy's questioning of Bondi. They're either going to ignore it completely or spin it as some kind of partisan attack. It's up to independent media outlets and informed citizens to make sure the truth gets out. That's why channels like Signal 76 are so important, and that's why I need your help to keep growing this community of informed patriots. Every subscription, every like, every comment helps us reach more Americans with the truth that the mainstream media won't tell them. Every share helps break through the information blockade that's keeping too many of our fellow citizens in the dark about what's really happening to our country. The stakes couldn't be higher, patriots. We're not just talking about political preferences or policy disagreements. We're talking about the fundamental nature of our system of government. We're talking about whether America remains a constitutional republic governed by the rule of law, or becomes just another country where political power determines who gets justice and who gets persecution. Senator Kennedy's questioning of Pam Bondi was a masterclass in how to defend our constitutional principles with both passion and precision. It was a reminder that we still have leaders who understand what's at stake and are willing to fight for the America our founders envisioned. But it was also a call to action for every American who loves this country and wants to preserve it for future generations. The restoration of our institutions won't happen overnight, and it won't happen without sustained effort from patriots like you. But if we stay committed to truth, justice, and the constitutional principles that made America great, we can rebuild what's been damaged and emerge from this crisis stronger than ever. That's a message I want you to take from this video, and that's why I need you to share it with everyone you know. The truth has a power all its own, but only if it reaches the people who need to hear it. Help me make sure Senator Kennedy's powerful message reaches every corner of this great nation.